Welcome, everybody, to the American Space Museum. I'm Mark Marquette. So glad you're with us to stay curious. As you know, for 25 years, the American Space Museum has been preserving the history of the American Space Museum right here in Titusville, Florida, one of the bedroom communities of the Apollo era, meaning Mercury, Gemini, and Apollo, and then, of course, the Shuttle era. And our U.S. Space Walk of Fame Foundation does business as the American Space Museum. And we're so proud of what we do to reach out to you with Stay Curious, not only to give you space history, but to share space workers' stories, whom we call national treasures. And none is more of a treasure to me than Marty Winkle, my co-producer for 1,230 some episodes of Stay Curious over 5 years. Say hello to me on that UCAC family microphone, Marty.
Hello, Mark. How are you doing today?
I'm good. We're glad that you're back. This is, of course, we had a mosh pit yesterday with Terry White and Mitch Rothman stopping by on a Monday, and we put them in here and opened up the mic and had a great time, as usual, asking them questions and getting some insight to their opinions about space news today. And glad to have Marty back in the saddle. And today we're going to talk about the shuttle era, a very interesting chapter of the shuttle era. This behind me is called Slick 6 out at Vandenberg Air Force Base in California. Show you where that's at on the Pacific coast. That's the Pacific Ocean in the background. And yes, this is where NASA was proposing to launch Space Shuttle Discovery to be permanently on loan to the Air Force to do spying in a north-south orbit, which is the optimum place to put a spy satellite as the Earth rotates beneath you, and you don't have to expend a lot of energy going to different places around the world on an equatorial orbit. So this was something that I knew absolutely nothing about, Marty, before I came here to American Space Museum. And I like saying, after writing a column for 22 years in Johnson City, Tennessee newspaper every week, 22 years of writing the Stargazer about space and astronomy, I thought I knew a little bit about the space program. But if I have a gallon of knowledge right now, I say when I came down here 8 years ago, I was lucky to have a pint full of knowledge. And that's from talking to people who did it, like Marty Winkle, my co-producer here, who worked on the Apollo lunar module as an electrical engineer. And then he worked on the Space Shuttle main engines as a launch process services manager. And we've got Gary Allgaier in the building. Gary's going to do a show on Thursday about a little known mishap in the payloads that could have been a disaster. So Gary's in town for a couple weeks, and going to avail him on Thursday. Very popular presenter is Gary Allgaier, a structural engineer on Apollo and Space Shuttle. So that's what we do around here. But like I said, I didn't know anything about this pad number 6. There was going to be the Space Shuttle launch Pad 6, thus the nickname Slick 6. Today it's used to launch. I'm not sure exactly if Slick 6 is, but now Vandenberg is used by the SpaceX company to launch their constellation of satellites, Starlink satellites, on their Falcon 9 rocket, for example. But nestled in the mountains there, we'll see where it's at here in just a second, and talk about this fascinating chapter of Space Shuttle history that came very close to launching. And one of the managers of the project, Charlie Mars, our godfather here at the American Space Museum, he was the NASA manager building it, and he was glad they didn't launch anything there. And I'll tell you why here in a minute. So stay curious, everybody. Let me push my button here to keep you all staying curious with me. Let's see. Let's go back. That didn't come up live, so let me go there. And there we are live. And there's my slide for today's show there. And this is 1988. What might have been. There was actually a mission slated to launch from there. And of course, the 1986 Challenger accident played a lot into ending any shuttle activity in Southern California. So, hello there to Fox Lake resident Steve Jokums. Everybody chiming in right away there. Dave Stangy watching with little Mia. Hi, Mia. Hope you learned something about the Space Shuttle today. And with his other grandson Nick and their mommy Meg. So make up the Kool-Aid or Tang and sit back with some popcorn, kids. Robert Law's up in Dundee, Scotland, and he's giving us a warning. Marty, he's coming back to Titusville in January next year. So can't wait to see you again. Had a lot of fun with you too yesterday. Mitch Rothman at Manned Space. Elena, hello to you. Tommy Usiak. And there is Jackie Murakami, the better half of Chris Callie watching today. Connie McDaniel and Julie Clay saying hi to us today. Two of our wonderful volunteers there. Of course, no one can hold a candle to you, Connie, the things you do here. Marty's candle glows pretty bright, too. Carlton Bailey, happy Tuesday to you. And he mentions something about the yes, United Launch Alliance or one of the other rocket companies is using it to launch some of their rockets on there. We'll see a few pictures of. So, want to wish a great birthday to this pretty lady. Happy 66th birthday to French female astronaut Claudia Hangneri. She is an international campaigner for STEAM education with 2 missions to 2 different space stations. Okay. She went, she'd be very interesting to talk to. Her 25 days in space, she and future husband Jean-Pierre were the first of 7 French astronauts chosen out of 10,000 candidates. She don't know what her maiden name is or if that matters in France. She's a medical doctor specializing in rheumatology. And there's a recent picture of Claudia Hangneri, born May 13th, 1957. Okay. Actually, I've got her age wrong. She'd be 68. All right, today, 57, and would make 68. First French woman to go to space on 2 Russian cosmonaut launches. The first one, she went up to the Mir space station for 16 days while Shannon Lucid, American, was in residence there. I never think about Shannon's stay. I think it was 84 days on up there that she had another female companion for a while, so it had to be neat. She did some body experiments on physiology and biology. She returned in a different spaceship, different Soyuz. And then that was in 1996, and then 5 years later, she was a flight engineer in the first European woman to visit the International Space Station, spending 8 days on the ISS. She again returned in an older Soyuz spaceship. So she launched and landed in 4 different spaceships, Soyuz, during her flight career. So very involved with ESA. Until her retirement about 20 years ago, and now she's a STEAM, science, technology, engineering, arts, and math campaigner there in Europe. So happy birthday to Claudia, 67. What did I say? She's born in 57, so she's 68 years old today. All right, there's Vandenberg entrance to the great Air Force launch site. On this date, May 13th, 1988, Air Force Secretary Edward Aldridge directed the Air Force to begin mothballing the Space Shuttle program at Vandenberg. What's interesting about that is Aldridge would have been the mission specialist on the first flight of that. We'll see a picture of him here later on with that crew that was going to be launched from Vandenberg. I'll bet some of you know the mission number for that. I'll let you guess that. I'll bet Steve Jokums knows what mission Discovery was planned to launch out of Vandy. And who was who's going to be the captain, the crew commander of that? And Claudia's Carlton's already spilled the beans on that there to all of you there. So, and hello to USS LK8 116 from Alexandria, Virginia. Elizabeth, glad to see the Rocket Lady on here today as well. All right, here's where Vandenberg is in California. It's the southern part of California. Okay, you see the whole Air Force Base occupies, of course, a big military installation there. It's Mission Hills is one of the cities around it. Santa Maria is north of it there. So, of course, and the rockets launched out of Slick 6 or any of these polar orbit rockets go south. There is the green screen that Marty has for me up there, loaded up there, and that is actually Discovery making a pass within the Space Shuttle, the Shuttle Carrier Aircraft, SCA. But I don't think it ever made it to the pad itself. They used Enterprise for the fit checks there. So we'll talk more about that. But there is Enterprise with the full ET tank and, well, it wasn't full, but full-scale ET tank with SRBs. And this was a clamshell type situation. The VAB, the Vehicle Assembly Building, was part of the launch complex and would be a clamshell and cover up this. And it'll become more apparent here in some of the later pictures I'm going to show you here. There's the launch stool or platform that it was on, a ground level shot. Oh my gosh, can you imagine the cameras there, Carlton, and how cool would that have looked there? Vandenberg was prime real estate to fly the orbiter southward on a path that for its telescopes to spy on adversaries needing to reach global orbits looping from pole to pole. But to get the orbiter from its landing pad over 3 miles away, they had to do contours to the road there. There it is on the shuttle carrier. And this ended up going to Kennedy Space Center and being used, this vehicle here. They had to mow down some of the sides of the road. Any signs or poles had to have a hinge, be completely removed, or have a hinge in them that they could be laid down to go the wings over it down the road there. So quite stunning, the pictures that people took when this was all tried out on the fit checks. A orbiter, well, it was Enterprise, used in the alt approach and landing tests on there. But what a cool scene that had to have been. Something that was to be repeated 2 or 3 times a year, as the Air Force was supposed to take possession of Discovery and use it exclusively for Defense Department missions. There were 10 Defense Department missions flown out of Kennedy Space Center, most of them in, if I recall right, 90, I'm not going to guess what years, 98, 99, I'm going to think there. So now there's how it all came together, okay, on the launch pad. All right, everything was assembled on the pad and put the pieces, parts in there. All right, some of the things were put, this would be your vertical assembly building out there that would cover up, and this would move a little bit further away. And over here was the control room. Okay, and that was some concern that the launch control was 1/4 of a mile away from this facility. You wouldn't have survived an explosion of that. Note how close the mountains are. There was some concern about the acoustics bouncing off the mountain and ripping off tiles. Okay, the ocean's on the other side. The main engines had to be fired into a tunnel coming out over my head here. The SRBs in another tunnel on the other side here. All right, and literally the tunnel for the SRB over here had to make a right-hand turn. So how you going to get? I think it was the right-hand turn was in the engines. SSMEs where the hydrogen could pool up and maybe explode. So they had to have a bunch of they weren't fans, they were jet turbines moving, designed to move the flow to help get the exhaust out until it reached it was immaterial above the launch tower there. um, Repeated delays in construction and numerous technical problems let the launch be targeted for the summer of 1988. Okay, was the first launch going to be? Well, we wouldn't know what happened in January. Summer of 86 was the first launch. And of course, the Challenger accident in January 86 nixed all that. But in 85, when these pictures were taken, prototype Shuttle Enterprise had performed a series of fit checks, and practice assemblies, even perching atop Slick 6 for a photo op there. So here's some of the minutia of it there. If you can read some of that things on there. You had a fueling hold area there. You see how the shuttle assembly building, they called it, the SAB. Here is your oxidizer holding area, pad concrete. There's your exhaust ducts coming out there. This was the payload preparation room, or what these are close by. Again, the things labeled there. Launch Control Center. See, I knew it was a quarter mile away on the left-hand corner there. Launch Control Center is near the payload integration building. You kind of get the gist there. There's a railroad track going near there that Gary Allgaier was telling me today, Marty, that railroad track would stop there as a break for the train crews going up and down the coast of California, and they would have to stop, even put a launch on hold and so forth. So that would have to be timed on there. There's your water tower for the exhaust there. Marty, you've got a question or comment?
Yeah, a question from Dean Babcock. Would the Air Force have had their own version of mission control?
Yes. Yes, they did. And that would have been in the Launch Control Center there. In fact, Gary Allgaier told me an interesting story about that, was that he was at a meeting there, and all the military said that we in the payload integration building here, nobody from NASA was going to be allowed in there. It was military only inside there, okay? So they'd be kicking the civilians out, all right, and only NASA military people with the payload would be involved in there. So it would be a situation where like we've talked about with Mikey Haddad, where they would put up screens and so forth for top secret payloads in the shuttle payload bay there for his level 4 guys when they were working in there, but they had to do some work. So, but yes, they would have full control of it. Carlton talks about that the remotes would have been great, that the press site had mountains between it and the launch pad. And we will see some pictures of those. You've seen pictures of those, Carlton, of some of the other ones there. The control center, Robert Law says it's Sunnyvale. Okay. But they had the control center right there, launch control center, that they were going to hand off, apparently. Robert has done, I trust him on doing his research on that. So there was a lot of apprehensions close to the control room, which Charlie Mars says a quarter mile away. But he also said it was an interesting operation, a fantastic area with wine, restaurants, great views. It was a joy to be out there for the NASA workers. There was about 50 NASA folks permanently stationed there to work Slick 6.
Mark, you had contractors out there also.
Oh yes, yeah, all kinds of contractors. And Clay Walker, one of the
Mhm.
contractors, did a he's done several. He did a program on this over a year ago.
The contractors from KSC that went TD White to Vandenberg.
Oh,
And we
right,
were at the
50 NASA people, and then you'd have contractors from KSC there. Wonder how many that would be. Of course, Mars is only speaking about the NASA people as a NASA guy. Look at that! Wow, would that be something to see? A lift off from there. You got the backdrop there. You see the concrete that's been poured. Every time I look at these pictures, I see new things in there. It's on a big pedestal for sure. Uh, a lot of money, billions and billions of dollars spent here. Big old USAF on the side there. They hadn't put Old Glory up there yet, but the fuel tanks, holding tanks here. Look how close those are if something happened on the pad that went wrong. I don't know. It's just a lot of tight quarters there, in my opinion. Again, another look at that launch pad there, lifted up. Okay. Uh, they had it all figured out, how to do it. And again, here is where it would be launched from, in Southern California there, going straight south. 6 is the one here at the bottom. Okay. These are the other launch pads there at Edwards. And so 6 is at the bottom. So you see it's just going straight south over the Pacific Ocean out of harm's way. And this was the crew plan for NASA's Space Shuttle mission, dubbed STS 62-A. 6 was for the fiscal year 1986. 2 was for Vandenberg. 1 would be Kennedy Space Center. And A is the first flight in that fiscal year. And the astronauts that were going to be on this maiden flight from Vandenberg, let's see, you got in the middle there, Bob Crippen. This was been his 5th flight. He'd already flown 4 times, and but he never flew again. But this was going to be his 5th flight. Okay, the pilot is Guy Gardner. Where's old Guy? Guy's got the mustache there in the bottom left-hand corner. We see Guy all the time. Marty, we'll have to ask Guy about this when he's out to Kennedy Space Center. He's usually out there about every 4 or 5 months, but I've never heard him talk about it, and I'd like to ask him about his opinion of it. This would have been Guy's first flight. He flew twice on 27 and 35. Richard Mullane, next to him there in the middle right there, would have been his 2nd space flight. He'd been to space 3 times. He'd been to space once and then 2 more times. Jerry Ross, this would have been his 2nd flight. Jerry's right there, and he ended up doing 7 shuttle missions along with Franklin Chang Diaz. Another Gardner, Dale Gardner's over my head there. Both mustachioed Gardners. I never think about that, Marty. He'd already flown twice, STS 8 and 51A, and this had been his 3rd space flight. And beside Cripp on the left, you got Edward Aldridge, and he was the Air Force Secretary that was in charge of the whole thing, the operation there. And on the other side is Brett Watterson. This would have been his first space flight, all right? And don't think either one of them have ever flown. They were going to be military astronauts, all right, all the way. Gardner, Ross, and Mullane were part of the 2nd post-Challenger mission, STS-27, a classified mission for the Department of Defense. Yes, they had several patches to choose from, including our friend Tim Gagnon was involved in this process. They were going to deliver a reconnaissance payload called Teal Ruby. All right, though this was going to be a DoD mission, it was not a secret DoD mission, as everybody knew what the payload was, a spy satellite called Teal Ruby. But there's the 4 different patches that were being considered. Okay, none of them very similar to each other at all. I like the Discovery up there. Vandenberg 1 is what the V1 is for. And there's a close-up of, they even had cloth ones made. I think that's one that Tim Gagnon worked on there. So very interesting part of space history, STS-62A, to be launched from Vandenberg. And it was, of course, canceled. The destruction of Challenger and subsequent halt of the program led to the cancellation of the mission. And they went on for about a year and a half, languishing. Are we going to launch from here or not? And then Aldridge Jr. made that decision with the government. And Charlie Mars recalls that it wasn't a shock. There was a lot of controversy. There is Discovery. That photo says that is Discovery being flown over. But that could be wrong, and maybe that was the Fit Check Enterprise doing it. But still a cool photo. There again, Slick 6. Look at the shuttle there in the middle. It's not in this picture here. And what a sight for sore eyes, so to speak, on there. Got Sundog 7 watching today. So thank you for watching. Yes, it would have been amazing, Robert Law, if they would have went ahead with it and it had worked. And Michael Bruno asked, he wondered, where is the X-37B being directed at facilities in Sunnyvale or where? That's a good question there, Michael. We'll look into that. We've got the X-37B did land at California, the latest one. There's not one up there now, but the last one that was up there for about 2 years did not land at Kennedy, but it landed it out there. Maybe they're going to launch it from there and put it in a polar orbit. That certainly would make a lot of sense to me. So let's see. We're saying that after repeated delays, it was scrapped. And apparently, the somebody commented that all the astronauts watched Challenger launch in January of '86, and they must have had a real sinking feeling about what they were going to do at California, whether it would happen or not. So anyway, that is looking at some of my notes of not to miss anything about this sort of hidden chapter of the shuttle era when shuttle launch pad number 6 was going to be used to launch a Space Shuttle Discovery that was going to be dedicated to the Air Force to use how they wanted to do it with Air Force astronauts. There's how it looked with a United Launch Alliance rocket on it. They still use the facilities the way they were intended to be, which is cool. There is one of the Delta rockets, I believe, with that silo-looking situation. Again, looking over the mountains across over the Pacific Ocean. And there's a Falcon 9 launch. Falcon 9s do launch from Vandenberg quite frequently. They're on a cadence about like over here. Seems like about every 4 or 5 days there's one launch from there as SpaceX is completing that constellation. Another beautiful shot of a Falcon 9 lifting off Vandenberg Air Force Base. So thank you all for watching today. I'm looking at our comments here. Thank you everybody for participating. Dean Babcock, shout out to you. And hope that me and Nick and Meg enjoyed this bit of Space Shuttle history with Grandpa Dave up there in Macomb, Michigan. So tomorrow, Wednesday, we're going to have a brief show. Marty and I both have a board meeting of our board of directors at 4:30. So I'll come up with something kind of short and sweet and something that helps you all stay curious, I guess, out there. Marty, anything from you?
Nope.
Nope.
We're real good here.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Marty. And Thursday, we're going to have Gary Allgaier come on and talk about payloads in the payload bay and a bullet that we dodged that was quite a serious situation that happened inside the payload bay, a real close call. Well, and that'll be part of our Thursday show. So until tomorrow, thank you for watching. I'm Mark Marquette saying I can't wait to see you again to bridge the space between us.